Right, now we are delighted to be joined on the line now by the one and only Steve Hackett. Of course, Steve doesn't need too much of an introduction, but of course, guitar player for Genesis and has an illustrious solo career as well. Now, Steve is keeping extremely busy at the minute. You've got Genesis Revisited with Classic Hackett, a 15-date tour. Steve, firstly, I mean, where did the inspiration for this particular tour come about?
Well, it's a world tour, basically. We've done the Caribbean, we've done the States, Europe, UK, and then later on we're off to Australia for the first time. These are all first-time places: Australia, New Zealand, Jakarta, Singapore, Hong Kong. Sometimes it's the Genesis stuff that is the key to this, particularly celebrating 40 years, the centenary, as it were, of its birthday, really, its 40th birthday. Wind and Wuthering, the last album I made with the band, which I was very proud of. That's part of it, but then I have a new album called The Night Siren. I'm also doing stuff from that as well, which has a more kind of... there's a social aspect, a social comment and political aspect with that, which I've steered clear of mainly in the past, but I feel it's time to speak out.
Yeah, I mean, well, let's talk about that now, because, I mean, there are some very political songs in that, for instance, West to East, very strong political themes. There's songs about war, refugees. I mean, where did this kind of desire to, start writing lyrics about that come from, really?
I think that I'm aware that the world is on the brink, as all intelligent people are, and I felt that it's the duty of artists and media to speak out and point out to people what's right in front of their noses, rather than to decry the fact that we don't have a quality of political leadership. There are no statesmen and stateswomen at the moment. It's just people trying to represent their own national interests at the expense of world peace. And I'm very worried by the state of things at the moment. We've got we have idiots in control, and we can't let them get away with it.
And I mean, in that particular album, I see that you've got musicians from kind of across, very multicultural kind of set of musicians as well in that. Obviously, that was deliberate, I take it.
Yes, it was, yeah. In a way, that the album's theme is unity, to show that we can have people all around the world working together and not shooting each other. We've got Israeli working with Palestinian, Icelandic working with Budapest, the Hungarians, Sweden, United States, the UK, Azerbaijan. So it's a kind of... I just wanted to show that it was possible for people to do something extraordinary together with the use of not just rock, but orchestral and world instruments. And so each part of the world brings something, I think, unique to it. The Arabic influence, sitar, all manner of things that are being used and things that are being sourced from certain instruments and then changed so that for instance, we've got the charango from Peru, twinned with the tar from Azerbaijan, so that you get moments of extraordinary performances by other people. It's not all about my solos and what I do, but I feel I'm a catalyst for that. But the subtext of the whole thing is peace, love, harmony, anything you want to call it. Not decrying or demonizing the foreigner, but welcoming them. And the fact is, you see, my family 100 years ago, Polish ancestors. In recent memory, I remember my great-grandmother talking about women being dragged along by their hair in Poland, pogroms, religious persecution. They escaped from Poland by way of Portugal, settled in Portugal for a bit, and then on to England, and names changed, etc. On my mother's side of the family, there's this. So there's this Jewish background, plus on my wife Jo's family, on her father's side, they similarly left Poland around about the same time. And again, basically what I'm trying to get to is the point that they were allowed into this country, whereas this idea of closing our borders and inflicting violence on poor people, that wasn't popular at the time. Compassion fatigue hadn't quite set in to the degree that it has at the moment.
Yeah. I've got to say, I mean, Behind the Smoke, a personal favourite of mine. I think the lyrics in that are absolutely fantastic with a strong kind of refugee theme. On the album as well, of course, the Night Siren out on the 24th of March. Are we going to see, in the Skeleton Galleries, obviously the kind of first song that was released from that, are we going to see that featuring in the Genesis Revisited?
That's right, yes, that'll be part of it. So it'll be, I will do 3 things from the new album, because I'm very proud of it, and I think a number of these things are relevant at the moment. It's not just a political album, though. I mean, there are other themes that come into it. There are love songs and all sorts of things, and yes, it is about playing because my main instrument is guitar. But it's not all didactic. It's not all soapbox rhetoric. But I think, like most people, I'm very worried about the state of play at the moment. We are dangerously close to the brink, I feel, having elected in all the wrong people around the world, and every country seems to be going the same way at the moment. The rise of the right, people like Rupert Murdoch worry me. Owning most of the newspapers and pushing people's buttons just because, Europe doesn't listen to him, but the British government does, and we shouldn't be being led like this. Brexit is a terrible idea. I'm a committed European. I've been working in Europe, for years and years and years now, and the idea that it might be more difficult to work in these various places worries me greatly. You see, I remember the days when, before we were a proper part of the European Union, I was often being stripped naked, at customs, just part and parcel of being a touring musician, being a musical migrant. And I don't fancy the idea of going back to those days where you had to have a carnet. In other words, the carnet itemized every last screw that was in every last fuzz box that you might bring through, and sometimes gigs didn't happen just because they wouldn't. The backlog of trucks and the amount of powers that customs enforced at that time. It meant that it was unwieldy, and we've got this wonderful thing, I think, called the European Union. Whoever heads it up, it seems to me that so much can be lost, mainly world peace, never mind trade and economic prosperity and all the rest. So it seems that whatever governments want to do, I'm very pleased that there are checks that come in from time to time from the judiciary in various countries, with the voice of reason and restraint. And whilst we've got a so-called free press, then at least we won't be in the dire straits that America is in at the moment. With riots going on all the time, and America is at war with itself. It's a deeply divided nation, as we are. And the idea of this so-called clear mandate from the British people, it's not at all clear. We might have to say goodbye to Scotland the way we're going. Anyway, end of speech. There we go.
In the kind of, going back now to the tour, obviously kicking off on the 26th of April in Dublin, and then you finish up in the Palladium on the 19th of May.
Yes.
I mean, what are you kind of most looking forward to? Is it showing off the new stuff, or, seeing as it's obviously 40 years since, Wind and Wuthering, your last album, with Genesis? I mean, is it that mix, or is there anything you're particularly looking forward to in that tour?
I'm looking forward to presenting both the new stuff and the old stuff. Having done the new stuff in America, I've had the strongest response to new material that I've ever done. So there's something that works very well dramatically with the new tunes. They are very good. They weren't necessarily designed originally to be played live, but it just seems as if They happen to work really well live. I mean, I think if you can get 3 cracking numbers from a new album that thrill audiences, then you're not relying quite so much on keeping the museum doors open for the glorious older exhibits. But, I love doing the old stuff too. But, the road less traveled, the new stuff, of course, emotionally I invest everything in that.
Now, Steve, before we let you go, we want to ask kind of what is one of the funniest, because obviously your upcoming tour, what's one of the funniest moments you've had on tour? Are there any interesting stories that you've encountered?
Oh, yes, I remember falling over on stage and being wedged between 2 monitor cabinets with my feet sticking up in the air, pinned down by a heavy guitar, looking like a dead fly until I was rescued by people. I didn't injure myself, only my pride.
Oh my goodness! When was that?
That was in Sardinia many years ago when I was playing a show up in the mountains on a sort of in the middle of this town square, and it was really, really extraordinary because we didn't have a chance to do a sound check for all sorts of reasons, because people started to show up early, and so I hadn't had a chance to check the sight lines or check anything, and I took a tumble. And but you haven't lived till you've fallen over on stage.
Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Best of luck with the tour and the new album.
Thank you. Nice to talk, Henry. My name's Steve Hackett, and you're listening to Raw.